I'm Amanda Silver.
And I'm Alex Howard.
And this is Dirty Laundry. So I wonder what the key is to the healthy step-parent dynamic. It's not coming on too strong, not coming on with a sense of entitlement, or like, this is my house now, this is my rule, these are my rules.
Yeah.
More try to connect with the kids and like giving them that like, I'm always there for you type of feeling.
But here's a question. Shouldn't that just be parenting? Like the not coming on too strong,
Fair.
The not over-disciplining, the not telling them that they're a fuck-up.
Shame. No shame.
Yeah.
And shameless
Like we've
parenting.
talked about this as moms. So like how do we ensure we don't have like these teenage daughters who hate us and resent us and, you know, all the fears.
Right.
And it's, what did you say? Unconditional love.
Yeah.
So how, like to me, that should be parenting in general.
I think it was like a meme or something that like, if something goes wrong or I'm in a bad situation, the first thing you want your kid to think is not, oh my God, my parents are going to kill me, or I can never tell them. It's, I need to call them right now.
I need to call them right now
and
so they help me.
If I was a step parent, I would want them to feel the same, which is I need to call my stepmom right now because she's going to come in and she's going to help.
And so maybe that's kind of the silver lining of the step parent. You now have like an alternate parent. Right. Who you can call, who has your back, who loves you, who will bail you out of any circumstance, but they're not the like parent, the biological parent that has to discipline, that has to, you know, sort of really hold up those firm, I don't know, household expectations. But again, I'm like, well, that to me is just parenting generally.
But I think that's in a healthy step-parent relationship. Sure. So I think in a healthy one, yes, you have that like an ally, someone who you can reach out to who's going to be there for you unconditionally and support you. That's in the ideal. Yeah. But I think there is a lot of situations where it's not a healthy situation. And that could be for different reasons. Yeah. Right? Yeah. The kids are a lot older, or there's behavioral issues from one or the other, or the parents have their own issues, or there's very high conflict. There's so many reasons why. But I think in the ideal world, it would be nice to have that. Just more people to love your kids.
More people to love your kids is always a good thing.
And more people to love you as the adult, right?
And support you.
Yeah.
But it is taking on a major role.
Credit to those step parents.
Huge credit to those step parents.
It's hard enough being a parent to your own kids and dealing with all the shit that you have to deal with. But then to deal with another person's kids.
Today on Dirty Laundry, we have the brilliant Jamie Simkins, who is a stepmom therapist and a blended family expert. Jamie is a stepmom herself twice and has incredible resources for those that are considering becoming a step parent, entering into step parenthood, and just generally raising stepkids. So welcome, Jamie. Okay, so welcome so much to Dirty Laundry. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We love to start off pretty much every episode with our guests kind of with like their backstory. Who you are, how you came into the sort of work that you're doing, anything you feel like you want to share. Part of our whole sort of MO is storytelling reduces isolation, destigmatizes, sharing is caring. So the more we can do that with our personal stories, the more, you know, we all benefit as a community. So with that, with my always long-winded questions, Jamie, tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm already like, love that.
Good.
So good. So my name is Jamie Simkins. I am a licensed therapist here in the States, but I'm also a stepmom coach. So I focus mainly on working with stepmoms, women who are in a committed relationship with a person who had kids with someone else. I also have a private practice here in Chicago, but I'm really pivoting my work, a lot of my focus to the stepmom, blended family consulting, stepmom coaching piece.
And did you find there was like a sort of missing niche of like supporting these stepmoms?
Yeah. And I had so my sort of origin story is having a bad experience on the other side of the couch as a stepmom myself in couples counseling, in family therapy to try to deal. And I had a really, I would even say traumatic, experience and like harmful experience with that therapist. Unfortunately, a lot of therapists, as a trained one myself, there's not a lot. I had a whole family therapy class. We never touched on blended family. We never touched on step families.
In this day and age, I'm so surprised to hear that.
Well, that was in 2010 and 2012, but still, you
No,
would think.
That's recent.
We're not
That's
talking 1950s. Like
Yeah,
that's
right.
recent. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And I wonder why that is. Is that because the education system hasn't caught up with sort of the societal changes in the family dynamic?
It's gotta be, but I don't know why, since there are more. I think the studies now are saying that there are more blended families,
Than not?
than sort of
Or
original families or
Yeah.
traditional
yeah.
families,
Yeah.
The
you know?
nuclear family is a thing of the
Yeah.
past
really
almost. I mean, it's a
is.
rarity that people are like, "Oh, you
Right.
have 4 kids with the same 2 parents?"
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
unusual. So,
Yeah,
good for you for
exactly.
seeing this need and sort of
Yeah,
jumping on it and providing that
yeah.
to your clients and to your followers. So, that's great.
So
Yeah.
obviously your own
Yeah.
experience really informs the work that
Yes.
you do. And how do you manage to sort of juggle like empathizing with your clients and
Mhm.
oversharing or,
Mhm.
being maybe too, because I know with therapy you really don't share anything, I don't think anecdotally, but
Mm.
please correct me if I'm wrong. How do you find that balance?
Well, I do share, and as a therapist, I do share. In school, they teach us not to,
Hmm.
but then I realized after about 10 years as a therapist that I'm a real person and my
Yeah.
clients know I'm a real person. And I like when my own therapist talks to me like a real person. And
Totally.
Yeah, you feel connection
so
to
I do
them.
self-disclose.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But even with my coaching folks, that's why I like coaching even better is I can bring my full self. I can tell the dirty laundry, right? And share the stories. And what helps them the most is them seeing me on the other side, having been through and gone, I've been where you've been. I've dealt with
Right.
the bio mom, or I've, had this feelings of feeling like an outsider. So there isn't much that I don't share with my coaching clients.
So let's go back to your story then from the
Yeah.
beginning, how
Mhm.
you got into the stepmom role twice.
Mhm. Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
don't you share with us a little
Yeah.
bit about that?
Absolutely. Well, I like to say I'm a repeat offender because I've done it twice. I must be a glutton for punishment. But no, I just find that once you're over a certain age, the
Mm.
likelihood of you finding a partner who doesn't have a past,
Yeah.
right? Who doesn't
Mhm.
have a partner, are slim. So I'm on my second go around as a stepmom. So I have 5 stepkids altogether,
Amazing.
ranging in age from 19 to 25, but they were as young as 4 when I met them. So my first marriage with my partner, uh, I'm still in touch with those kids, some more than others. And now with my current partner, I have 2 wonderful stepdaughters with that partner.
And do they ever commingle?
No,
It's very
only because
separate.
there's no reason. Like we don't live in the same area.
Okay.
There's no reason to.
Yeah.
And we're really diving in here, but that's kind of
Yeah.
one of the things that's hard. If you divorce as a step parent, you have no legal rights to those children.
Yeah.
You could never see them again if, left up to your own, kind of devices, right? Because
So
there's
in
no.
Canada, I think it might be a little different because
Oh, okay.
step parents, if you've acted, my understanding is I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is if you've acted as a parent for a significant amount of time, you can
Mm.
get access rights to the kids. So not
Wow.
decision making or
Mhm.
custody as it's more commonly known, but you can
Right.
get access time. And my understanding is that it would come out of the other your spouse's time. So like for example,
Okay.
if you were going to get divorced and they already had
Yes.
kids from a previous marriage, it would come out of
Mhm.
their parenting time, not the original
Exactly.
parent, not the other bio parent.
It's almost a
Yeah.
similar relationship as like grandparents. They
Right.
do have some, obviously biological connection, which is different than a step parent, but still, you have to really advocate for that time. And then yeah, similarly, it's parsed out of that
Parent's
side.
time.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and you'd have to prove it. And so for a step parent, it's
Mhm.
not an easy task because there's a lot of, money involved too to go
Yeah.
fight for
Mhm.
parenting time with your
Right.
step kids that's already going to be so limited. I can
Right.
imagine that that's very difficult.
And so in
Yeah.
your experience then, were the kids willing to still see you? Did you maintain
Mhm.
relationships? I mean, you said they're sort of still in your life. How did you
Mhm.
navigate that with them? Is it more like an opt-in versus legal
Yeah.
platform? Yeah.
We may have the access rights thing. I just don't know about it in the States. I would feel like I would have known about it. But I'm lucky in that my ex and I retain a friendly relationship, and it wasn't a scorched earth divorce or
That's
anything,
great.
by that stretch. So that helps, right? Like if you hate the guy, you're not exactly going to be like, "Hey, do you mind if I see the kids on your time?"
Exactly. Your time that exactly. Your weekend. Well, I get a
Right.
couple hours on that weekend.
Yeah,
That's a tough one.
exactly. So, right. Usually there's not a lot of goodwill,
Yeah.
but there was in our case, to an extent. So I'm lucky he was good to me in that way, and I'm very close with my stepdaughter. So I think just being that we're both girls, we connected. But with her brothers, I wouldn't say we don't have a relationship, but I think they're just dudes off living being in their 20s. Like it's not contentious. It's just kind of like not
You relate
existent, but
more.
I still think of them as family. My parents still think of them as family. My family thinks of them as
Right,
family.
because it's not just you, it's also your parents
Right.
who've taken, like, I don't know how long you
Yeah.
were married for, but
We were together 8 years,
sorry, hello?
about 8 years.
8 years, so and from 4 to, let's say, 12, like, they're formative
Yes.
years, so I'm sure, your parents take them on as, "These are my new grandchildren."
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Yeah.
When the
Yep.
marriage dissolves, then the grandparents don't
Yeah.
get to see. That's
tough.
Well, and
tough.
talk about the dirty laundry of it all. The day that we announced that we were divorcing, that's not an easy conversation for any parent, whether it's your first or second. But I had so much guilt because I'm like, okay, here I am, another representation of a failed marriage, which I don't love those words and I don't use those words personally, but like, okay, here the kids are seeing another relationship that didn't work out.
Right.
So that was hard,
And so now that you're moved into then working with other women, working with other stepmoms, what does that look like? How are you supporting them in this role? Is it really about navigating, sort of the boundaries with the biological parents versus the step parents? What does that look like? Is it navigating their relationships after divorce, or is it just while they're currently married and sort of involved in those step kids' lives?
So it's more helping them be a part of a blended family as a stepmom. So they're coming to me and I'm able to inform both from my clinical training as a therapist, but also everything I did wrong and right in my first go around and everything I'm doing differently this time around. It's a completely different ball game. So I'm helping them with things like, I would say the main issues are like having a bio mom who is more conflict, like more conflict than not. Different parenting styles than your partner. So a lot of stepmoms feeling that their partners are permissive because the dads have a lot of guilt. So they may not be as on top of parenting. I'm helping them navigate those kinds of issues, as well as like, oh, my stepkid, I'm having trouble connecting with them. Things like that.
There's a whole host of issues to deal with.
Yeah.
Because you're raising, you're not like with your new partner, you're raising their kids. So you have to sort of like, sort of
defer almost
to them, but then there's also another parent who's watching your every move and critiquing you, and
it's a real
pressure.
It's like a real three's a crowd situation, right? Where you have to navigate that. And do you find a lot of folks are dealing with the biological parent, or is it now you're the stepmom and they have, let's say, sole custody, so that they're not also navigating life with a third parent?
I have a couple of people in my program, my coaching program, who bio mom is either like deceased or just not in the picture for different reasons. Yeah.
And so
but more commonly there's a bio parent or a bio mom very much involved.
Very much involved, right?
Yeah. Is it like in terms of when you say your program, do you find that there's so many similarities that you are able to kind of do a bit of a generic approach? Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's generic. I wouldn't use those words. I kind of call it a pharmacy for stepmoms. So like, if you're sick, you go to the pharmacist and kind of say, oh, I have itchy eyes and a runny nose. And, oh, that sounds like allergies. Here's some Zyrtec, right? So you come to my program and it's like, oh, I have a high conflict bio mom. Here you go. Here's the lessons for that. My partner and I fight all the time about the fact that his kids never pick up after themselves. Okay, here's that.
Got it.
I'm having trouble connecting with my stepkid. I dread when they come over. I have a lot of anxiety around that. Okay, here's your prescription for that.
Right.
But I find that it all really boils down to really just a few things. You have to have the right mindset as a stepmom. You have to have the right reaction, so emotion control, and then you have to have the right conversation, so know how to communicate for what you need, but also having boundaries as well. And then having your own life outside of being a stepmom as well, like having a full, exciting, fulfilling life outside of like, I am a stepmom.
That's not your only identity. Yeah. You're more than just a parent. And so, I mean, I'm constantly triggered by my children. It is a work in progress of, telling myself, you are the adult, you need to learn how to self-regulate. But that's what I mean. So how does that experience differ? Because part of me thinks, well, if they weren't my kids, would they trigger me less? Or is it because there's a lot of similarities because they are mine? And then are we now getting into nature versus nurture and all of that stuff, right? So would there be instances where it's almost easier as a stepmom to step into these lives and obviously not be a friend, because a parent should never have that kind of, in my opinion, relationship with their children. You're still the parent, but is it easier when there's two other parents to kind of take a bit more of a lackadaisical approach and almost be more on their level?
Like an aunt almost? Like an aunt-like approach?
Yeah, maybe.
Like almost?
The data and the research suggests that, and my experience, shows that it's better when you come in and just sort of act more like a friend or an aunt, but that doesn't work for every family, especially if your stepkids are 2 years old,
right?
And they need diapers changed and, actually need to be parented. So every step family is different. So I can't really say what everybody should do, but I can say like best practices are to try to connect with your stepkids for years before you ever even begin to try to parent or discipline them, because it just ain't gonna go well.
I think some step parents walk into the role like, this is my house now, right? I'm the mom of the house, so you're gonna listen to me. And that can cause some backlash.
And you're right, you are the lady of the house. It is your home, and you get the two non-negotiables are respect and safety. And I say everything else is cherry on the cake, the cherry on top of the frost or, sundae. And to answer your question, Alex, I think you're more triggered. You're just as triggered, or if not more triggered as a stepmom, because there are more complicating factors. You've got more people involved. You've got maybe bitter, unresolved stuff between the original parents, going on. And also, you as a mom know your kids love you. When they fall down, they're going to run to you. Right. When they have a bad day, they're going to go to you. We don't get that as stepmoms. And then on top of that, society, there's all the evil stepmom or like the other woman, kind of stuff.
Yeah, that evil stepmom, it really does a whole disservice to the lot of you. I mean, you have to work double hard really to combat
prove yourself as a good stepmom, as one that's not hated. And I wonder what that's from. Is that from, relationships that the kids tend to have with the stepmom, or is that from maybe a feeling of insecurity from bio mom that sort of develops? Like, I'm wondering
like
where
they're poisoning
sometimes, or is it that it's difficult to connect with a mother figure that's not your mom?
I think it's all of the above. I think it really depends. And on top of that, I think it's patriarchy. And I like to say there's a special misogyny reserved for stepmoms, because there's a special misogyny reserved for moms.
For moms.
Right? So, of course, that's going to happen with stepmoms, and
they get
oftentimes stepmoms are I like to say we're made to be the scapegoat or the punching bag of the blended family. If we bring up a problem, we become the problem.
Right.
Because we can see things because we're on the outside and we point it out, then we're the problem for ever saying anything.
Do you think stepmoms get a harder time or worse rap than stepdads?
Yes.
Yes. But isn't that just parents in general? Like, don't moms get a bad rap more than dads, right?
You see, and again, misogyny.
But I think the expectations are higher for the stepmom than they are for the stepdad. The stepdad is seen as like kind of just like a supplementary person. He's just there to do a few soccer things. I feel like there's not as much pressure. Whereas a stepmom is sort of has more pressure to really step into that role as like, running the house, doing all the mom stuff. And maybe it's
But without the discipline
of
a parent, of a biological parent.
Without the discipline of the biological parent, but still needing to do all that stuff. Because how does a stepmom come in and be like, it's, it doesn't matter to me what day of the week of special school days it is. Like, it's not my responsibility. Whereas a stepdad, I feel like, can do that more easily. Like, take a step back.
I can't help but talk about this stuff from a feminist perspective.
Please,
that
we love it.
load, that labor tends to fall on the female or the woman, right? Not on the man. So stepdad just gets to come in and be a hero. He gets to be the savior.
Exactly what I was trying to say. You said it better.
Are the heavy.
No, it's true. It's true.
The load.
It's absolutely the parenting stigmas as well, right? You see the mom at the park on her phone and you think, God, what a terrible mom, as if she's not paying attention to her kids. You see a dad at the park on his phone. It's like, what a great dad. Look, he can multitask. He can work from the park. What a superhero. Like, it's an uphill battle for us moms, step or biological, if in my opinion. So it's just the patriarchy at its finest. What would you, for some of our listeners that are maybe entering a new relationship or kind of at that point where they're in a relationship, their partner has children from previous marriage or relationship, what are some, like, going into the stepmom role, some sort of do's and don'ts? I mean, you already talked about, like, find, commonalities, find some kind of relationship with a child outside of simply that parental disciplinary role. But even in terms of, like, meeting the kids for the first time, what does that look like? What are you coaching your clients on?
I love when people come to me earlier rather than later than that. They don't often usually come to me in crisis, like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? But if there's anybody out there listening and you're wondering when is a good time to meet the kids, again, there's no hard and fast number, but when I'm pressed for one, I say at least 3 to 6 months. When you know that this is serious, that this is going somewhere and you're going to be together, because you don't want to be another person this kid has to, again, say goodbye to, right? So that's a good rule of thumb. Another piece is connection over correction. So focus on connecting before you ever try disciplining. If I could go back to my younger self and give her one piece of advice, it would be focus on being a girlfriend or a wife first. Be his partner first. They already have 2 parents.
Right.
My relationship works best when I focus on being Justin's partner. Because if we don't have a relationship, if we don't have a foundation, we don't have a family. There is no blended family, right?
And I would imagine that often the kids can sort of get a bit muddied in that. So if you have a really strong foundation, then you are able to understand boundaries, understand their parenting style, where to interject. So having, I would assume, a lot of conversations around, let's say maybe you're about to move in together maybe. What does that look like? Asking, what do you want my role to be? How do you see me fitting into these kids' lives? Like, really having those types of conversations in advance.
Yeah, you would be surprised how many people don't have those. So when they come to me in my program, one of the first things in the early stages we do is burn down preconceived notions.
Love that.
And redefine your role. Like, what expectations did you have and did he have? There's what you want as a stepmom and then what actually works. What I wanted to nurture. I wanted to be mothering. I wanted to have a mothering role, especially to my 4-year-old stepdaughter, because she wanted to call me mom. But that's not what necessarily worked for our family with her brothers.
And that can be difficult for the bio mom too. So how do you navigate that? Like, you come up with a different name, you come up with something that's sort of mummy-ish.
Like, in my ex's divorce decree, it said no one is allowed to call anyone mom.
I was gonna say, we have that. Every parenting plan I do has that written in for sure. Yeah.
But now going back, I mean, as a therapist, I wish I had just told her, because she asked me, can I call you mom? I wish I had just said, you can call me whatever you want. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And it's really, like, if we're really here for what the kids want, then that's what she wanted to call me. And maybe tomorrow she wants to call me Jamie again. But I wish I hadn't been like, oh no, we can't. Your mom said that there can't be anybody or whatever. But I'm like, sure. But I said, you know what, let's come up with a special name for me. And they ended up calling me James, which a lot of my friends call me James instead of Jamie. So that's fine. And they called my parents like Yama. They came up with their own special name for my mom instead of grandma. So I get it. If I was a woman whose my kids were calling somebody else mom, I would be freaked out by that. So my heart goes out. I'm not, saying go in and just call yourself mom by any stretch.
Well, and I would
But
imagine too, if folks do like are in that high conflict relationship and all of a sudden there's this new woman and now the kids are calling her mom, like conflict is going to go up even higher.
It doesn't,
And that
help
does
things.
not benefit the children. That is
No.
not in their best interest.
Right.
So yeah, it's like let the children have a voice, but maybe not a choice. We still have to be the parents and the adults.
And it might be a conversation with saying, you know what, you have a mommy, and maybe we find another name to call, stepmom, but that's not mom. But that's still more endearing, maybe, and more of a connection than just the regular name. Like
would you ever have
creativity.
considered bringing in the biological mom to that conversation specifically to be like, hey, she's asked for this. What do you think? How can we navigate this together? Like, do you feel like you need to be sort of a real strong team, or is it better just to stick with your partner and your new family and sort of keep those roles really separate and the worlds really separate?
It depends. That's not usually the case that the person is willing to have those conversations.
Right.
I think it's best if we act as if it's a business relationship. So we're friendly, we're polite, we're courteous.
Right.
And that's a good expectation to have. But if that person is willing, there are some people who are really evolved.
Yeah.
And some of the women in my program are like, oh my God, I'm so lucky. Our bio mom is great. We're not friends, but she's great. She's not contentious. She doesn't, and that's great. Being in a blended family is a spiritual experience. Like trying to be a good stepmom is a spiritual awakening. You have to really work on yourself a lot to succeed in this role. And I think everybody, dad, bio mom, and stepmom, but not everybody's up for that work. It's not everyone's up for that.
From your therapist lens, would you encourage family therapy? Like bring the kids in, bring the parents in, whoever is sort of willing to attend and have those conversations in a therapeutic atmosphere? Yeah.
It can be helpful, and I've seen it make things worse.
Oh.
So I would say for anyone listening, be sure to vet your therapist or your coach and make sure they have blended family experience, certification, or at least like maybe are even a blend step parent themselves.
Yeah, because we don't want to end up like your experience where you're totally turned off.
Yeah. Where my experience was just I have to take it. I get no say. And some of the women in my program, the therapists have been like, yeah, I just kind of just like have to take it and like step back. And that's not helpful.
No.
I mean, yes, stepping back and disengaging is actually something that I teach, but there's a way that you do that isn't harmful, that's actually empowering and not traumatic.
And speaking of traumatic, how do you find, I mean, it's one thing to talk about a stepmom as an adult entering the world of these children. How does one navigate the blending of the children if you have biological children and now stepchildren? What's that dynamic like?
That's tough, right?
Yeah.
So more layers means more complications.
Sure.
I think it's Stepmom magazine, Brenda, the editor, coined, even when it's good, it's complicated.
Right.
And that's what it is. Like, so when you have your own kids, you're bringing like his and hers. I think it's important to make sure every kid has a say. Like you said, a voice, maybe not a choice, but a voice. Every kid should get their own space, whether it's a shelf or a drawer. Their own room would be great. But so one place that they don't have to share. And again, to lower your expectations, like burn it down to the ground, start from zero. Respect and safety are the non-negotiables. Everything else, like they don't have to get along, so don't push it.
Right.
And they're probably not going to get along, and that's okay. That doesn't mean anybody's doing anything wrong. That's just the nature of blended families.
It must be hard when you do blend the family and there are, like, you have your own children, let's say, and stepchildren. How do, how you treat them? Like, it must be a difficult dance to do, because it's like, can you discipline them the same way? Do you, you want to give the stepkids the space where you don't want to infringe on what they're doing with dad, but then also you don't want to exclude them either, make them feel like they're not as important as your own kids. So, like, how do you balance that?
It's a lot of, again, that's why I say this is a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
A lot of communication and a lot of emotion regulation, a lot of talking, bringing them in. And, I find it's best that, like, if I had my own kids and he has his own, I discipline how I discipline. I have my rules, you have your rules, and then we have house rules.
Right.
That's a good way to do it. But it's just a constant, like, recalibrating and a constant, like, how are we doing now? Did what we do this week work? Do we change it next week? It's just, I always say, like, when you like something, just wait. It's gonna change. So
It's
don't
so
get used to
true.
it in a blended family.
It's so true.
It's so with
true with
kids for
everything.
sure though. Like just when you think you've got it figured out,
Totally.
gone.
You figured what kind of sport they like? Nope, they've changed
They're
their
over
mind.
it. All right. Just when you bought the
right.
like Costco size, whatever snack they're into, you're like, oh no, I hate that
without
now.
fail, like Murphy's Law, without fail, every time. Then it goes to waste every
100%.
time. Yeah, that's so funny.
And that's what I wish that stepmoms who don't have their own biological children, one thing I really try to help them understand is some of this is just being a mom.
Yeah.
Like a bio mom is having the same experience. Go ask your girlfriends.
Right.
Or your sisters. You know what I mean? Like you guys were saying, like, I just bought a case of flaming hot Cheetos. I thought that was like the snack of the, times now. Now we're on to something else. And as stepmoms, we take it personally because we don't have stuff built up in the bank. We don't have all that lovey-dovey stuff built up in the bank. We have like nothing in the bank.
So
we have nothing but to take it personally.
I mentioned at the beginning of this episode just sort of the importance of, shared storytelling and building that community. Do you mostly do one-on-one, or is it a group sort of coaching focus as well? All of the above? Because I could just imagine how validating it would feel for so many stepmoms to know that they're not alone in whatever their, trials and tribulations are.
Yeah. And going back to my origin story, when I was a young stepmom in 2010, I started my own support group using meetup.com, and it grew to like 80 women. I couldn't even hold everybody in my house because there was nothing. There were books, but there wasn't like that camaraderie and that sisterhood. So I created it myself. And then I decided to go to grad school and become a therapist. So now here I am, and I've built a program where there's built-in sisterhood, there's built-in, communication, because there's nothing like being able to say like sometimes I don't like my stepkid. Does anybody else ever feel that way? Or like, oh God, bio mom, blah, 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 or whatever, to have that, like Brene Brown saying the antidote to shame is connection. And we connect by being vulnerable with each other. So my program is like a 360 approach. You have the sisterhood, you get one-on-ones with me, you get group coaching and couples coaching as well. So it's sort of like wraparound holistic, care. Whereas therapy, it's like one-on-one, we're in a session together, just working, you and me.
Yeah. And I'm so happy you said that, because I feel like there are days, and I'm going on the record with this, to say, I don't enjoy my children. Like some days are really hard, and some days I look at them and I'm like, I love you, of course, but goddamn, I do not like you in this moment. Yeah. But as a biological mother, it's way more socially accepted. As a stepmom, I don't think you have that luxury to be so candid and open, unless maybe you are with other stepmoms who really do get it.
Right, exactly. Nobody gets it. And like, I remember even like my mom or my sisters or girlfriends trying to be helpful, but that was not, like, I remember it used to trigger me when my mom or one of my sisters used to say, I don't know how you do it. I just don't know how you do it. And I'd be like, well, that's not helpful. That makes me more anxious. I'm now more freaked out.
I mean, you were a stepmom of 3 kids. It's 3 little kids. Yeah. That's a lot to take on. Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
Yeah. I'm curious, this is less about the stepmomming, but more about entering a relationship, falling in love with somebody, and then saying to yourself, I am now taking on 3, in your case, children. Like, how much do I want to be with this person to inherit the complexities of being a stepmom? Like that, we go into relationships, it's a one-on-one, but it's not when there are children involved. How does one even navigate that? I mean, is that for folks that are, let's say, not interested in taking that on, a total deal breaker? I mean, should you have those conversations straight out of the gate? Is that then too presumptuous? I mean, it's so hard to navigate a new relationship generally, let alone when you've got, these other dependents that you're also entering a relationship with.
And how do you know until you're in it that maybe it's not for you?
Yeah. And that happens sometimes, And I always try to guide my clients back to their why. Why are you in this? Because you fell in love with this person. Right? And try to connect back to the hope that you felt before you got in the shit of it. Yeah. And is there something still alive? Is there something still there for us to work with?
But like, you fell in love with this person. Like, is that enough? But is that enough?
That's why I think you take your time.
Yes.
I think you give yourself the time to get to know the kids, to really try out the role of being a stepmom before you just jump in and take it on in a more permanent way, right? Like,
oh yes, I like to say go slow and then go even more slowly than you think you're going.
Right.
Like, definitely take your time.
Yeah, that's some really good advice. Any other, quick snippets of advice that you would leave our listeners who are maybe in this step-parent role or considering?
Oh gosh, nothing new. I would say don't DIY it. Talk to your partner about expectations. You are not alone. You're not crazy. Chances are someone else has felt what you have felt or I have. Focus on being your partner's partner first. Take your time. Go slower than you think you're going. And if you're already in it, like 2 years in, that's okay. It's never too late. You can get help and we can course correct and change some things. But I got to get in there. And like, it's kind of like when you do exploratory surgery, like I have to get in and kind of see and be like, okay, no, this needs to go. This needs to go. This can stay. We'll stitch this up. And then we'll send you on your way.
Yeah, because there's so many similarities, but I do imagine it's very family specific, case by case. They have, little nuances that you do need to tailor custom to that family.
There are custom, but like I said, if you have at least the right mindset, the stress management and emotion regulation, and then the communication skills, you'll be good. So I do teach those to everybody. Yeah. And then the pharmacy comes in where you go, okay, high conflict bio mom, here's how to deal with that. Right. Teenage stepkid hates you, here's how to deal with that.
Yeah. Oh, I imagine it's completely different depending on the age of the kids, the genders of the kids, their own dynamics. You mentioned early on, having your parents involved, this extra set of grandparents for the kids, and then, divorce happens and nobody goes into a relationship thinking it's going to end. But is there ever an instance where, we talk about going slowly, we keep those additional family members out of the mix for a period of time or longevity? Or is it just like, the more people that can love these kids, the better for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, unless they're toxic people and you don't want them in the mix, they're going to be more harmful than helpful. But yeah, keep them included for sure if they want to be. Yeah,
or like,
that's your family.
Like, I wonder though if you wait to like
even longer,
you wait to introduce your parents to the kids until it's a sure thing, because then let's say you break up, the kids start to get attached to their new nona or whatever they want to call them, and then they're gone. Yeah. Like, that's hard for the kids.
And so it is so hard for the kids. How did your parents, we always talk about obviously the kids' perspective, it's so important, but how did your parents deal with that? How did your, the friends in your life deal with your divorce, having less of a relationship with those kids from your first marriage? Because we all know divorce generally so hard on, again, the kids, but also on all the other people in their lives. How do you manage all of that?
Well, they were sad. I mean, they were grieving for me, I think mostly, and they knew that the kids were still my mom still texts them, like they still maintained a relationship. So it wasn't as lost as it could have been. Yeah. But it was hard. I mean, divorce is a loss. It
really
and it affects. It's such a, what's the word I'm looking for? There's such a range of people that it affects. Really, it really reaches.
Yeah. Yes, right. Like kind of like the ripple effect, right? Like yes.
Okay, so if folks want to work with you, because we have listeners from all over the world and loads in the States, what's the best way to get in touch with you? How do they do that? Where can they find you?
Perfect. I love it. I actually have a lot of Canadian queens in my program. So
I
love
great.
So, but I also have clients in Japan and all over the world. So I'm on Instagram at Rebel Stepmom. So you can find me there, or rebelstepmom.com. And those are the two main ways to get a hold of me. And you can learn all about who I am, my offerings, my background. And I provide a lot. Like, I'm very big on free help, free content. Like, you can go to my Instagram page and pull out 15 different things, that you can use right away. And then I also have a free Facebook group for stepmoms with 27 trainings from me, as well as free resources as well. So you can go in there and get all that for free. That's Stepmom Mastery on Facebook.
Oh, that's amazing. So incredible. Thank you for the work that you are doing, for supporting these stepmoms. And thank you for coming on our show and supporting our stepmom listeners. We really appreciate the time. And all the expertise.
Having me. It's so good to be here.
Thanks, Jamie. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver, produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it, and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.